215 million monthly players and up to 50 million players daily, the widely known MMO League of Legends has come a long way to the game that it is today. I will cover the post-launch of League of Legends and go through its current seasons. League of Legends was announced on October 7, 2008. Now, to know about League of Legends, it's a 5v5 competitive MMO whose overall goal is to defeat the enemy Nexus, which is a large building inside the base. Our first season of League began on July 13th, 2010. So during this time frame, 28 new champions were added, which was the largest that will ever be added. And it was one of the biggest time frames for League because they finally started adding a competitive drive to the game, adding a ranked mode that let players see how they match up against others and have like a hypothetical rank. This was also the start of their first esports team. Season 2 began on November 22nd, 2001, which was the first time the game seen significant changes. 20 more champions were added, and Riot showed off that they can't only just add champions, but they can change how champions looked and how they felt. So during this season, they did a visual rework, which completely overhauled how the character looked in-game, and they did 4 of them. New items were added. Season 3 began December 4th, 2012, which was one of the biggest updates that League has ever seen. League started rising in huge popularity in Season 3, and the competitive scene developed very quickly, and Riot realized they had to change it. So they did a almost complete overhaul of the game. Season 4 began November 20th, 2013, and this was probably the most important season in League of Legends. This is when the big change happened. Esports took off. This was the biggest year for esports. Esports was having major tournaments, major players were getting signed to different teams, and tons of teams were just being created. The whole game got overhauled. Riot actually started making a way better game. All the graphics were updated. There was a huge audio overdrive. The map was changed. Brand new voice acting for all the characters so you could actually understand them. Season 5 began on November 20th, 2014, and this was the first season to create a meta, or an overpowered role in the game. Because Season 5 became known as the jungle meta, and then later became known as the juggernaut meta, because they reworked 3 key characters into something no one's ever seen before, and they just completely dominated. Season 6 began November 11th, 2015, and this was major changes to the map now. It made 4 different dragons now, and each dragon spawned at the same time, but it was different which one spawned, and each one gave you different stats. Now, on paper, it was a good idea, but this adds so much RNG to the game. Didn't like it. They kind of weren't really good, but overall, eventually people came around to it and they kept it, and it's still a major part in the game. Later in the season, this became known as the tank meta. This was the worst season to people. People hated them as well because it turned into, instead of a skill-based game, it became who can survive the longest and who can get the tankiest and just win games. Season 7 began November 10th, 2016, and this was the most balanced the game would ever get, even though jungle still dominated. To make more people play, only 5 new characters were added, and League has a reputation of toxicity. It produces toxic players and added a new honor system. So if you were deemed toxic or trolled, you could get reported by your teammates or other people, and if you were found guilty, you got a suspension. On Season 8 began November 8th, 2017, and this was the most fun season to most people, and the impact was incredible. A lot of people thought the game wasn't going to make it. Riot hired way more people for their company, and they decided that they needed to start working on, instead of gameplay, the more lore aspect to it. So they gave characters backstories. Now, gameplay-wise, the biggest change was runes and masteries. Runes and masteries were something that you would take before the game started, and your champion could equip them, and it would change how you play. You could do any builds you wanted because every rune could work with every champion, so people were having fun just doing whatever builds they wanted. And the biggest thing was, instead of having to play hundreds of games to acquire and buy these runes, instead of buying new characters, they gave them to you for free. Season 9 began 2018, which was mainly back to lore and universal. So many stories. Competitive drive to the game was massive. People cared about ladders. There were scouting grounds. Teams wanted to scout the top players for their esport. Now the huge change, not just competitive drive, was in the ranking skill sets. They added 2 more tiers now. So if you wanted to be higher ranked, you actually had to earn it. So the current season, season 10, began January 23rd, 2020, which is, to be honest, it is one of the worst seasons of League ever made. People hate it. The new champions they added are game breaking and they don't compare to the old characters. But in doing so, it's just making the older champions worthless and no one wants to play them. Also, they changed all the runes that everyone loved from the game. They got rid of them and changed them. So a lot of people that used to play for fun and like just play with their friends stopped playing because the game really isn't made for fun anymore. The only people really left playing are the competitive drive or players that have been playing for 6 or more years. But the competitive scene of League is really huge. Esports is still bigger than it's ever will, and I think it's going to keep going up. So I've covered all of the seasons of League from its announcement day to season 1 to season 2 all the way to today 2020 season 10. And League was and still is the most popular MMO in the world, and it has become one of the most influential games on esports into millions worldwide. It's to the point where there are millions watching daily. Just live streamers streaming the game average 30K a person. So the game's rich history will keep evolving today.